Welcome to the Weekly Telegram brought to you by the Straits Free Radio. On this episode of the Weekly Telegram, Singapore grapples with COVID-19 and headed into recession. China influences EU report on COVID-19. COVID-19 puts Africa to the test. Kim Jong Un's sister, North Korea's new leader. And lastly, armed American protesters storm state capitol building. First, Singapore grapples with COVID-19 and headed into recession. Once hailed as a model country in containing the coronavirus, Singapore has seen a significant jump in infections, the majority of them from foreign workers. April 21st saw the highest number of new infections at 1,426 cases. Since April 24th, numbers have been under the 1,000 mark. As of May 1st, Singapore has a total number of 17,101 cases. An opinion piece on the South China Morning Post by Tan Tarn Hao addressed the parallel universe in Singapore where migrant workers, primarily from South Asia, have suffered greatly from the lack of proper care provided to them. The government has extended the country's circuit breaker from May 4th to June 1st, further straining the country's economy. Channel News Asia reported on 28 April that Singapore will enter into a recession this year, with an economic forecast ranging from -4% to -1%. This will be the worst ever contraction in Singapore's history. China influences EU report on COVID-19. The European Union has removed references to a global disinformation campaign led by the Chinese government since the outbreak of the coronavirus. This comes after pressure from Beijing, further putting into question China's reach in matters of foreign countries. Geopolitical analysts have described this as sharp power, an additional lens to the existing hard and soft power in international relations. Sharp power asserts that countries like China have infiltrated the institutions of states and, through coercion, pressure them accordingly. COVID-19 puts Africa to the test. May 1st, 2020, Al Jazeera reports that as of April 30th, the coronavirus death toll has reached 1,598, with 37,393 confirmed cases on the continent. Africa remains overwhelmed in dealing with the coronavirus. South Africa has imposed a night curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., while Rwanda has announced partial lifting of restrictions, saying that it will allow workers to return to work on May 4th. Kim Jong Un's disappearance from media has put into question who will succeed him. More from our local correspondent, Kai Su-herwan.
In the last week, we have heard rumors of Kim Jong Un's death. These rumors came after he was absent on the Day of the Sun, which was on the 15th of April, a day celebrating the country's founding father, Kim Il-sung. He was last seen 4 days prior at a government meeting. Daily North Korea, a South Korean-based news site, reported that Kim had gone to hospital for a cardiovascular surgery on the 12th of April. And according to CNN, U.S. agencies monitoring the intelligence from North Korea said that Kim's state was in, quote, grave danger, unquote, from the surgery. With that, there has been talk about who would be his successor. Many fingers point to his sister, Kim Yo-jong. While these rumors have been shot down by the South Korean government, with a top foreign policy advisor to the South Korean president, Moon Jae-in, telling CNN, quote, Kim Jong Un is alive and well, unquote. Let us take a moment and think of a North Korea under Kim Yo-jong. Some may say that her rule would bring a more open and peaceful North Korea, but history shows something different. In the past, female leaders from patriarchal autocratic regimes are unable to pass reforms and are basically fighting an uphill battle against the patriarchal system in place. This is an example seen with the Empress Dowager in China. According to Alex Lowe, a columnist from the South China Morning Post, quote, whenever she introduced reform, it was too little too late, or just wrong-headed. Such as when in 1905 she abolished the centuries-old civil service examinations and undercut whatever support was left for her and her wealthy elite, unquote. When we're looking at what will happen in North Korea in the future if his sister were to take power, we no need to look further than history to see what could possibly happen. Now, armed American protesters storm state capitol building. More from our American correspondent, Jack Kelly.
Conflict in Michigan between Republican-dominated legislature and Democratic governor over emergency powers and lockdown restrictions. Lockdown protesters nationwide are defying shelter-in-place orders. This raises questions about the timeline for these restrictions and how long they can sustainably be continued. Tensions rise nationwide as indefinite timelines cause unease, leading to challenges for local governments on what they should do.
All right, so we now have entered the part in our show where we will just casually discuss the news that we have just reported. So Jack and Kai, welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
So, Jack, I'm more interested in understanding more about what's going on in Michigan. It's quite, I would say, unfortunate, but also very hilarious event that's taking place in Michigan. Why are these people taking up arms and going against their local government?
Well, so to understand the situation, the Michigan State Legislature, which is majority Republican, have been trying to lift some of the restrictions on the shelter-in-place orders, allowing people to go back out, to open businesses up, to let people get back to work. But the governor has maintained the state of emergency and is vetoing any resolution that comes her way. The people of Michigan, at least these protesters, would like the lockdown to end, and so stormed the Capitol building while armed. There has been no reports of any violence yet, but it is definitely a frightful situation as these protesters come in and shout and yell and chant things such as freedom over fear and other such chants.
Well, what do you guys think about this? Jack, what do you think about this? Kai, what do you think this means for America if the government and the people are at odds with each other in dealing with this pandemic?
I don't know if we should take some protesters as representative of the people.
Sure.
That remains to be seen. And I do think that to some degree the protest was formed a bit inappropriately. There are other methods of protesting. As nationwide, these protesters just defy the lockdown orders and will, hold up signs out in public, out on the street. But I understand the feeling of necessity for going right up to the governor and saying that we are fed up. And they raise genuine concerns about how long can this lockdown continue. People have lives, people have livelihoods, they have jobs that they need to do. How much are we going to hurt our future over something right now?
No, I completely agree in the sense that these grievances are to be noticed, and perhaps there needs to be a more pragmatic approach apart from just a lockdown and slowly opening up the economy so that people at least can return to their previous normal lives, and maybe through that way the government can regain some kind of support and cooperation from the people. But again, of course, that is yet to be seen, and perhaps the media in which we are taking in regards to all this information is also drumming up this and spinning up this kind of dissent that's taking place. So it's probably not as horrible as it seems, but and it's a very small minority of people who are defying these quarantine orders.
The fact of the matter is that no matter what local governments will decide on, there will be pushback against it, and they all come from genuine, good faith arguments. For example, in my state of Montana, the governor has begun reopening the state, and there is still opposition to it from people who say, we don't know if we're ready for it yet, especially in Montana. Our healthcare system is not as strong. Are we prepared for this? And everyone is concerned about human lives and livelihoods, and we shouldn't forget that when we engage in these conversations.
Yeah, that's quite right. What about North Korea? What's going on there, Kai?
So in North Korea, we have a situation where we really don't know what is happening. because of the very secretive nature of the country.
Sure.
But from what we know, and from multiple sources, that in the event of Kim Jong Un's death, his most likely replacement is his sister. Um, so, uh, so we're seeing right now, especially around the internet, is people kind of saying things like, if she comes to power, that she'll be more open, more lenient, and I see that as something that is completely ridiculous. After Kim Jong Il died, a lot of people were saying that his son Kim Jong Un will take over, and he'll be more open because he's younger and he studied abroad, and that is not the case of what we saw.
Mhm.
And we also see something in history where female leaders who come from autocratic regimes and come to power in relatively patriarchal societies end up becoming more brutal to prove themselves, or to not only prove themselves but to cement power, so that the people who would think that she is just a pushover would no longer think that.
And what about the internet's response to that? There's been a lot of memes being spread around about this Kim Yo Jong.
Well, as we take with the internet and their memes, some of them we could take as as just jokes, and some of them we could take as some people being extremely serious. There's a term that people have been using, people simping over Kim Yo Jong. Simping basically meaning that they're in a way just bowing down to her as something as like a figurehead of some sort. And I think it's extremely disgusting, extremely ridiculous, because this woman has a place in an autocratic regime that still has forced labor camps and are keeping people under the shackles of this communist authoritarian regime.
It's this sort of obsession
Mm.
over a particular female figure
Mm.
for a lot of these mostly men online.
Mhm.
I mean, isn't this in a way like perhaps something that can be used to Kim Yo Jong and the North Korean government's advantage in, gaining some kind of legitimacy and
I doubt
support?
so. I doubt so, because with it's a very small percentage of people online. I don't see a lot of people from the mainstream media or news people on like the news saying anything about simping over her. I think it's a relatively small percentage of people on the internet, so I don't think they'll gain that much legitimacy over it. I think it's just another internet trend that will like boil
Sure.
over
Yeah.
in like the next week or so, and we'll never hear about it until something else happens in North Korea again.
Well, let's
Do you
hope
think,
it.
do
Sorry.
you think
Sorry.
if that there's some other legitimacy that can be gained? We haven't seen that much of her yet, but
Mm.
perhaps I would say she's definitely more attractive than Kim Jong Un. So perhaps that is more palatable, more charismatic in a way. Could possibly help relations between North Korea and other countries.
I would not say so, honestly. Like he said, that's one of the main reasons why people online are kind of simping over her. The idea that she's a female and that she's more attractive, and I don't think that would really play a case in international politics. Seeing that the fact that she would still be, if she were to come to power, she would still be the leader of an autocratic regime, a leader of a country that has multiple, like, hundreds, if not thousands, of human rights abuses that are happening every single day, and a country that is just absolutely deplorable, honestly. If you're thinking about how the citizens live and how they are treated and how they are misinformed every single day of their lives.
Well, yes. I mean, that's very true, and let's hope it doesn't, manifest this kind of fascination and fetishizing of this leader or this possible leader, political figure, manifests itself into how countries conduct their relations with North Korea. But with the news closer to home, Singapore having extended its circuit breaker to June 1st from May 4th is definitely a very concerning development, especially with the number of cases that have gone up over the past week. Majority of the cases coming from migrant workers, and the reason why for listeners who do not keep up with Singaporean news or know exactly of the plight of a lot of migrant workers in Singapore is that the conditions in which they are in are absolutely horrible. You have almost 10 migrant workers packed into a small room on bunk beds and poorly ventilated and in absolutely squalor conditions, and the government failed to address this problem prior to the outbreak, when NGOs were raising awareness about this. And so as such, now I think Singapore is suffering from the very lack of attention that was paid that should have been paid in the beginning. And I think also this is a signifying its complacency in any situation. Singapore was dealing very well with the virus, contact tracing and implementing social distancing measures and so forth, and we were hailed by the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Washington Post, and other international media outlets saying that we were handling this absolutely well, along with other places like Taiwan and Sweden. But I think because of the government taking so much pride in all this, I think they dropped the ball and became complacent. And I think this is characteristic of the Singapore government in such situations. And of course, now that the country is facing an extended circuit breaker, which is a de facto quarantine lockdown, we're going to expect a recession in the coming months, which is concerning for Singaporeans. As this country is a service oriented country, and it's going to be hard to start up this kind of an industry in a situation like this, when we're going to gradually open up our economy again. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops, and we'll obviously be trying to cover as much as we can in our weekly telegrams. Jack, you're in America. Would you rather be in America or in Singapore during this time?
For my particular location, because I am in Montana, as I've said, there are very few cases around. Like I still go out to get groceries every now and then, but everything is still pretty locked down. It really depends on where you are in America. Whereas for Singapore, I imagine a heavily urban country, it'd be a lot more difficult to be there right now. Like for example, if you're going to be stuck inside all day, there's no going outside. But here in Montana, because the population density is a lot lower, there's a lot more nature around. Like every now and then I'll go for a walk at a nearby park or something, and still go outside, still get some fresh air. But I imagine it'd be a lot more difficult for me in Singapore. So
yeah, I think that's something that non-urban areas have as a luxury, to be able to at least have that ability to go out and enjoy nature. It's quite difficult to do so in an urbanized country. So obviously, other regions like Africa are battling with the coronavirus and obviously suffering greatly because of their inability to stem the spread of it properly. It is wholly unfortunate, and hopefully hopefully we can expect some kind of proper measures, not just laws and lockdowns to stem the virus, and hopefully a vaccine comes about. But we are no experts in that area. We are just interpreting the news.
It is my understanding,
Yeah.
though, the purpose behind all of these lockdowns and social distancing measures is so that we can expand our healthcare capacity, so that when people get sick, they don't overwhelm the system, like what we observed in Italy.
Yeah, I think
unfortunately.
Italy was an unfortunate example of
Mm.
what not to do.
But that raises the question of when do we open back up? Because are we ready?
Well, countries
to
like
open back up?
China and the city of Hong Kong have also started to open up again because of the decline in numbers of cases, and perhaps their facilities are more equipped and ready to deal with the inflow of infections. But of course, we don't know fully the properly the amount of damage this has really done to China, and at what cost their ability to at least resume to some sort of normalcy in light of this situation. Well, that's all we have time for this week. We hope that you enjoyed this week's edition of the Weekly Telegram. It is our test run, and in the following weeks, we intend not to just cover coronavirus-related issues, but covering more obscure events that are taking place, and also things that are not being covered in the news because of our distraction towards the coronavirus. So let's try to dig deeper into the news and figure out what else is happening around the world. We hope you enjoyed this week's edition of the Weekly Telegram. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.